How you doing, Kevin? Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday, Garrett. How goes it?
We are good. Fall weather is upon us, and we're enjoying our 75 and sunny days. How about yourself?
Okay. Also, you got fall weather already. It's like 90 degrees out where I am. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll take it. Well, we got an exciting power session ahead here today, and talking about monthly cost forecasting. So, kind of setting baselines and monitoring progress, and how to adjust forecasts and things like that. So, should we jump into it?
Yeah, let's do it. So I think most people are familiar with the cost forecast, which is kind of going through your budget and kind of updating each cost code, cost class line item. What the monthly forecast is, it's this timeline tab right here. So the way that I always think about it is your adjustment tab is really saying, okay, what are our total costs going to be on the project? The timeline view is then saying, when are those costs going to occur? So it gives you a really good way to kind of map out, okay, what do I think I'm going to spend month over month? This is really important for two reasons. One, it's just good kind of planning practice. And then two, it's obviously very important to know if you're trying to forecast your revenue at all, just because in construction, revenue is a function of percent complete. So in order to know what your percent complete is, you need to know what your costs are month over month. So being able to look at it monthly is a really good way to get a picture of what your revenue might be on a project. So if you see up at the top here, you'll start with some of the key KPIs. So you've got your projected final contract, percent complete, your earned revenue to date, your backlog, job cost to date, your projected final cost, and then critically your cost to complete. So your cost to complete, this is what you need to forecast month over month. So if I think my projected final cost is going to be 342 and I've got 28,000 in cost, that means I've got $313,000 on this project that I still need to spend that I need to allocate over the duration of the project. And then this right here, this is basically checking what you're forecasting over the remaining months to make sure, hey, is what I'm forecasting over the remaining duration of the project match that cost to complete. So the KPIs at the top kind of give you just an overview. And then as you move down here, this chart will basically tell you what your costs are month over month to date, and then also what you're forecasting. So that's the difference between this solid line here and the dash line. The solid line represents your actuals. So I can see I've actually spent $27,000 in July. And then the dash line is what I'm forecasting the cost I'm going to be at for each given month.
I like that.
Um,
Nice and easy to read.
Yeah, it's really good just to kind of see as a visual. I mean, it's, it kind of gives you a quick snapshot of how it actually looks like it's mapping out on the project. And then down below that is the table view. And this is really where the meat of the tool is here. So the first thing you'll see is the schedule. So this tells you basically the start date and the end date that you have for the project. So right now I'm saying, hey, this project is going to start in July 2025 and it's going to finish in July 2026. The cost dates right next to this here. So this represents the months that you actually have cost in. So I can see, all right, my first costs on the project were on July 18th, and right now I have costs up to August 17th. So these are really important because let's say I had a scheduled date, that started before, or I'm sorry, started after when I had my first cost. You want to know that you're starting to see those costs before your schedule actually starts. And then the other thing you can do here is if you go and modify the schedule. So let's say I think this is going to actually get delayed a month and it's going to run through August 2026. And I save this here. What you'll notice is in the table, I'll now have an extra month to forecast here. So updating your schedule basically says, okay, here are the months available in this table below that I actually need to start to forecast. And then to actually update your forecast, it's very simple. You kind of just go in here and say, hey, in August, I think we're going to have $40,000 in costs. September is going to be 60,000 and so on. And what you want to watch here is this cost to complete down in the bottom right. Because this is basically telling me, hey, how I'm forecasting my cost right now, I'm forecasting $20,000 more than I actually have to complete on this project. So I need to go and get and update this. So let's say I say, all right, this is actually going to be 25,000. That looks really good. I now am zeroing out at the end of my cost to complete here. So that's the easiest way to go in and start making your adjustments is just enter the cost like that. I think a lot of project managers, they don't always think in terms of cost. frequently they think more in percent complete. So what you can do here is if you go up to the top, you can change your forecast method from cost to percent complete. And then what I can do is rather than entering a cost, I can just say, what percent do I think I'm going to be done at the end of each month? So here I can say, hey, September, I think I'm going to be about 40% done. October, it's really going to be about 50% done, and I can update it that way. And then as you're updating those percent complete, if I go back to the cost here, you'll see those costs are updating based on that percent complete. So sometimes that's a lot easier way to think about it. It's just, hey, let me actually update what percent complete I think I'm going to be done each month rather than looking at it from a cost standpoint. So that's kind of the manual way to make adjustments. What can be kind of tough, especially if you look at a project that's early on like this, is you might not actually know in detail what you're going to be spending in April of 2026, right? It's 9 months away. Your labor, you don't know what your crew size is going to be on site. You don't know when you're going to be getting material deliveries. You don't know what equipment you're going to have on site. So some of the things that's easier to do is just use standard cost curves. And this is something we see a lot in construction is yes, every project, it's going to have a different distribution in terms of how the costs hit each month, but it usually follows a typical pattern. Either it's usually a linear curve, kind of, hey, the month or the cost each month are approximately the same, or it's going to have what we call like an S-curve distribution where there's a slow ramp up, it peaks, and then it ramps back down. So what you can do here is you can go up to this distribution and you can say, all right, I want to apply a linear curve to this project. And basically what that's going to do is it's going to take your cost to complete and distribute those costs evenly across the remaining months of the project. Now, maybe you say that linear curve isn't really, you think, accurate. You think you might have more of that S curve pattern. You say, hey, we're going to have a slow ramp up and then ramp back down. You can go in here and you can basically select the steepness of your curve. Is it going to be a very aggressive ramp up and ramp down, kind of a moderate one or a low one? And you can select that. So I'll just say a medium one here. If I save it, I can now see what my costs are based on that S curve, and you can kind of see it reflected in the chart here up above. So this is really good. It gets you kind of a starting place to kind of see, okay, I may not know what my exact costs are going to be month over month, but I can use these distribution curves to kind of give me a starting point. And then what you can do is you can use the baseline functionality in the platform to basically see how close you're actually tracking against those curves. So if you go up to the top right here and the show hide, you can select the different baseline views. So I'm going to turn on my S curve here, and I can see that low, medium, and high S curve compared to my actuals here. And I can do the same thing with the linear view here. And I can start to see, okay, which one of these actually looks like the most like the path we're following. And I can see, all right, it actually looks like the low curve of the S curve is the one that we're closest to. And then if I actually want to see it more month by month, if I go down to the chart here and I expand the year, I can now see kind of what my actual costs are versus what my projected are. So in July, currently my actual costs are 27,000. Well, that's actually closest to the linear curve. So maybe I really want to be looking at the linear curve. And I can use this information to basically inform me what's the shape of this project actually taking and not just going based off a gut feel to it.
I like it. Like you can compare the cost to the curves. It's super valuable.
Yeah. And then the last thing you can do here is if you want to get even more detail on each of the editable fields here, you'll see this arrow where you can click in, and this will basically give you a breakdown of all of the financials for that month. So you can see what your contract amount is, your cost amount, profit margin, how that may have changed from the prior month. And then you can see your percent complete, revenue, cost, and profit as of each month. So another really good way to kind of see how things are changing month over month, not only from a cost and percent complete standpoint, but what the trickle down impact is to your actual revenue, profit, especially if that projected final cost and contract is changing up above. And same thing here, you can kind of compare it to the different baseline views. So I can either look at, hey, how's this stacking up versus the linear? If I was following a linear curve, I would expect by August that I would have $70,000 in revenue versus the forecast of 47,000. or I can go through here and look at one of the other curves if I want to. So it's a good way to kind of understand not only what those curves are from a cost standpoint, but the overall financials for the whole project. And that is essentially it.
Yeah, some really good information here. I feel like maybe it's not pay attention to it as much just because when you open the tool, it defaults to adjustments. So it's nice to get in the timeline and really dig deep into that.
Yeah, and I do think like the timeline is something, maybe project managers aren't as dialed in on. Like you said, the adjustment, that's obviously going to be most critical, right? You really want to know what your forecasted final cost is, but then really kind of understanding what it's going to be month over month. It really helps kind of from a planning standpoint, understanding what's still left to spend on the project. And where that becomes really critical is obviously if you're updating your forecast here, the cost month over month, that's basically going to feed into the revenue forecast. So at the company level, you can start to see, okay, based on how I forecasted the cost on this project on that timeline tab, I can now see that associated revenue for or reflected in my revenue forecast at the company level. So really good practice if your project managers are doing it at the individual project level, updating their forecast, then you can kind of go down here and look at, okay, that was 25,003, based on the costs I'm forecasting, I can see the actual associated revenue. So it all kind of ties together as one larger picture. But yeah, that's everything I got, Garrett. I don't know if there's any additional questions you had or any questions from any of the people who joined today.
No, I think we've covered most of it, especially percent complete versus cost at the top and some different options to customize. So we can guess we can open up the floor to some questions, and if not, we thank you everybody for joining today.
Nice. Well, looks like we're good.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for your time, and I believe our next session is in 2 weeks on more dashboard work for PMs. So some more good things coming down the pipeline. All right. Well, have a good Tuesday. Thanks all.
I guess.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Bye.